Good evening. Welcome to the September 21st, 2020 meeting of the Parks and Recreation Commission for Coeur d'Alene. It's been a long time since we last met in March, so we'll see if we can remember how to do this. Melissa, why don't you get us started with roll call, please?
Commissioner Cranston.
Here.
Commissioner McDowell.
Here.
Commissioner Lean.
Here.
Commissioner Tate.
Here.
Commissioner Hill. Commissioner Wood.
Here.
Thank you, Melissa. We have a quorum this evening, and if I can ask Christy if you would like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance tonight.
You bet. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do any of the commissioners tonight have a conflict of interest with any of the agenda items tonight?
None here.
No.
Okay, nope. No conflicts. Our first action item tonight then is approval of the March 16th, 2020 meeting minutes. So I don't know if anybody's had a chance to review the meeting minutes or remember what the meeting was about back then, but I'll entertain a motion
I
of...
move for approval as presented.
I second.
Okay. Motion's been made by Commissioner McDowell and seconded by Commissioner Tate to approve the March 16th, 2020 meeting minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Meeting minutes are approved. Bill, that brings us to staff report.
Well, I'm glad we're all together finally. It's been an odd year, and I thought I'd bring you up to speed on what we've been up to while we haven't been meeting. So I've got a few things to go over with you, and then take it from there. So remember that about 2018, we took this Freedom Tree. Now, just a little backstory. The Freedom Tree was part of a blue spruce that was at McEwen Park near 4th Street in the parking lot. It had to come down for the revisions of the new park. And so we took that and made a carving out of it. Fred McMurray was a POW. He stayed in the Hanoi Hilton, and he was instrumental in designing this Freedom Tree carving that Jeff May, who on the left there, did. So it had been in place at McEwen for a few years, and in 18, someone had climbed on it and busted a feather off of it, and it was starting to sap a little bit, so we took it to his shop up there near Athol, and he was going to work on it. His shop burned down. He lost all the parts of all the art pieces that he was working on, tools he's had for a long time. He got the shop rebuilt. We then had been looking for, a tree that would be the size and diameter of that spruce. We were having a hard time finding one. We happened to lose a tree in the cemetery, big pine. And we got a hold of Jeff May and said, do you think this would be suitable? And he said, this actually looks really good. So he came in, took it, and brought it back to his shop and carved this. So this is he and Fred. We took this picture the day that it was been a couple months ago now when we installed it. And it turns out when Jeff told Fred about this tree and where it came from, he got really excited. He said, whereabouts in the cemetery did you get that from? And I told him, he said, that's really near where my dad's buried. He says, as a little boy, I grew up near there, and my dad was in the military, and he played taps regularly. And when Fred was there as a young boy, he would, when they would do the gun salute, he would gather up the brass. So it, again, has really good meaning for Fred because it turned out to be really close to his dad's grave.
Wow.
So that was just kind of an interesting little sidebar. The grandstands, finally, we're there. The only thing we're waiting on now is still, they're on order. There's right here, there are some spots that hang flags. We're missing lighting. So those will come in. We've got 2 of them going up this week and 2 are still back ordered. So we'll have those up and running. We opted not to have any sort of ribbon cutting this year. We're going to wait until spring when things are better for us. And staff was getting really excited, and we were planning something very grand. And then it occurred to me that evening when I went home, because we were talking about, peanuts and popcorn and hot dogs and all, how many people are going to be there. And we thought, well, gosh, I'm putting together a gathering that we're not even permitting any longer. So we're going to have to hold off on this a little bit. So we're going to do something in the spring and have a ribbon cutting then. Our hope is to maybe have some sort of exhibition game with the NIC girls and somebody or something. But when that comes forward, we'll have everybody there, and we'll all council, and we'll have a big public invite and see who wants to arrive and watch the new ball game at our new field. So Phil's here really just to give you an update. That's next on the agenda about the park. I just threw this in here just to kind of give you a quick overview that's coming forward. And he's got a lot of good stuff to talk about. We were a little bit behind schedule, but it's making for a better product. Phil and I have done a lot of field fitting with the contractor, and it's going to be something spectacular. This is the replacement of the city park restroom there, affectionately known by the crew as the Bricks. And we raised that about a month and a half ago. The delivery was behind schedule. We were asking for delivery on the 15th of this month. It's going to be the middle of next month. The only thing different about this is it has 5 facilities on each side for men's and women. This door that's opened here, about at that point, that whole north end of that unit is a changing room for the NIC girls. It's got two rooms for home team and the visitors. So you guys all know about this one. We did pay for it twice. So let's see, Jeff Conaway and I got together on this, and he found a really nice piece of wood, and we left the live edge on it, and had Paula Austin and her family were involved in this, and we got it up, what do you say, Monty, was it like 4 weeks ago? 5 weeks ago, maybe? So I don't know if you've driven by there or not.
Yeah.
Ron, Mrs. Egginger got Ron over there. Nancy got him over there right after we were there. They sent me a very, very nice card thanking us for it, and he was really touched by it. We decided not to have kind of ribbon cutting. Just Ron wasn't up for it, but he was very appreciative and wanted to express that to everybody here.
That's great.
So Tubbs Hill Foundation has been a lot more active than they have in past years. Monty's been working with them. And the gentleman in red is Todd Dunfield with the Spokane Conservation. Okay. And so he's been helping with that. We have some issues where we've got some erosion, and so we're realigning some of those trails. And this is what, the third time we've done this now, Monty?
That's correct, and there's another one scheduled for next week.
Good. So he's been working right along with Monty and our crew to get some of these trail realignments done. This one may be coming forward to you next month. We'll see how it goes. So this is the CAN course, 138 acres. Mr. Evans has been in communication with us. He would like to allow the public to utilize his private property. And he's been doing some trail work. We have trails on here. The previous owner, we had been trying to get some sort of easement with him. This is our parcel here, the Canfield Natural, 28 acres. It connects, and we always wanted to have this connection to Forest Service land, which is 1,000 acres? Plus. Yeah, 1,000 plus. So the previous owner wasn't really interested in that, but Mr. Evans wants to do more than an easement. He's going to allow us, through an MOU, to have another trail system in there. We've worked through, so this is odd, it's in the county. Our police department was a bit uncomfortable with enforcing rules on county property. So the Sheriff's Department is willing to put together an MOU with us as well. And being that it's a private parcel, with Mr. Evans puts up signs on the property about no trespassing, no camping, no fires, no guns, no motorcycles, that kind of stuff. He can just make a phone call to the Sheriff's Department and they would enforce those rules. So all the players are looking at the MOU that Randy Adams, our attorney, has written up, and hopefully we'll have some word back from them before next month and we can get this thing moving forward. We'll have a meeting here and invite the neighbors, allow them to have some input. And then after we get that input, we'll weave that into the MOU. Then after that, it will come back for you for adoption and then on to council to approve the MOU with Mr. Evans and the Sheriff's Department.
Bill, on the south end of that, is there a trailhead right there? Or
Yes,
what
so
is-
it dead ends, and Monty is, we met, gosh, it was early this summer, wasn't it?
Yeah, late spring.
Yeah. So that's where there's a resident here, and then Jason's property is here, Mr. Evans. So we would delineate that with some stones and allow for no parking in here. The idea is that we would have the parking on the street set back to Mountain, what's that across street?
Copper.
Copper. Okay. Anyway, so it would have signage, but it is a trailhead, but there'd be no parking.
Okay.
And I think that's, this one, yes. So we've been working with the fire department. They're putting a boat garage. The bids came in a bit high. We rejected those and asked council to allow us to negotiate with the contractor. So we sat down a couple different times with them, and we decided one of the large ticket items turned out to be the electrical. The electrical had over here where it comes through the seawall about $15,000 or $20,000 in demo cost. When Mr. Boyd and we worked on McEwen, we allowed for conduit in here. So there shouldn't be any sort of demo on any of the flat work in there. So we can get power out of that building in there to supply a power source. There's a roll-up garage door on this that they would just remotely open up and close. And of course, there's a little bit of lighting inside. But that was the largest ticket item, was the electrical. We felt like we could do some of that work in-house and maybe outsource some of that work. I think the electrical number was pushing $68,000, if not $70,000. So we pulled that out and thought we could do it in-house for a little cheaper. And so Kenny went back, Chief Gabriel went back to council and got a little bit of more funding to help us through that. But that will be done during the winter and then put in later. And there's just another angle of it right here. And then in order for us to save a little bit of money on the Atlas project, Monty's been heading up a crew, and we've done the installation of the playground at Atlas. I think it was $55,000, I think, in savings there, something like that. So he's been out there working on weekends, and then we were kind of running a little bit behind schedule, so I had him out there even more during the week. But there's just some photos of how it looks. And I think the chips to put the fall zone in is supposed to arrive on Thursday. And we're going to keep the fence up around the playground. We've got the site at Atlas fenced off up until time when we get ready to really open it up. Then we'll unfold or peel back the fencing and then allow people into it. And that's what I have for you as far as updates. You have anything you want to add on that playground?
These pictures don't show the swing sets that went in, and we got fabric down, just waiting on chips.
Good.
And a log crawl.
Okay. So something that goes along with these elements here? Okay.
That's correct. It's made out of concrete. Looks like those logs that you can climb across, but you climb through it like it's a hollowed out log. It's pretty neat.
We've got one over here in the smaller lot here at McEwen, very similar. It's just, it looks like a log, but it's made out of concrete. Okay, with that, I think I'm done with the updates on the park stuff. On On the recreation side of things, we're still doing this fall. We're still doing, for recreation, we're still doing things. We've got youth soccer going on, youth flag football, dance program, adult softball. We did swim registration this morning. We've had to thin out our numbers and create more of I guess a 6-foot zone with everybody in the McGrain Center, which means that we don't have as many openings, and we also had some stipulations from parents that a lot of times it's a family affair. They bring all the siblings and the dads and moms are all there. We've asked that one parent and one child and we've had a couple of complaints about that, and I'm sorry that we can't accommodate everybody, but we're doing the best we can given these odd times. So we're doing that. And we also are looking for some youth basketball, 3rd through 8th. We're working out a deal. The school 271 hasn't been letting their gymnasiums open up to anybody, and so we're hopeful that by that first part of November we'll have some basketball, youth basketball going on, but that's still in some pending discussions, so thought I'd just bring it to your attention that it's out there, we're getting close, but nothing's been solidified yet. That's it, Scott.
Okay. Any questions for Bill and Monty? Thank you, Bill. Do any of the commissioners have any comments or announcements at this time? Okay. Next on the agenda are public comments, and since we don't have public with us tonight, I guess we pass through that and on to presentation regarding the Atlas Waterfront Park. And we have Phil Boyd here from Welsh Comer Engineers to lead us through the presentation.
Let me get my presentation up here. And if it's appropriate, Chairman, as we move through it, if there's questions, I'm glad to take them as we go.
Okay,
Okay?
sounds good.
So Bill showed this picture earlier. I think everyone's probably familiar with it. The one thing that is updated in it as the development parcels on the upland have sold and we've got a better idea of what they're going to be. We've dropped in the proposed product that the developer plans to put there. So for instance, in these two areas right here, these are going to be single-family homes. You know, there was an option that could have been townhomes or single-family homes. They're going to be single-family homes. In this area, it is going to be multifamily and mixed use down in here. There's a mixed use building there and then multifamily buildings here. And the rest of this is still up in the air. I think, as the commission probably knows, the triangle piece is now in play. And so the city's acquired it, or is working on closing the deal. And this area is going to get re-master planned and updated now that that parcel's in the lineup. So the project progress, thankfully big portions of the project are completed. The parking lot, the trail paving, the irrigation system, the building roofing, the siding and trim. Bill and I are both tired of hearing the COVID excuse. I'm sure it's really valid on a lot of stuff, but you know, if the lights go out, it's because of COVID. But some of them that have really did have a hiccup is the products that are manufactured out of the area. So there was a big hiccup on siding. You know, the plant shut down and they literally couldn't get the stuff. Windows, that was another big hiccup. A plumbing part, you know, there was a unique plumbing part. And so that's drugged things out. And La Riviere has been, you know, they just move on to something else, but gets a little bit frustrating, but I think we're all experiencing that. Ongoing work, they're finishing the building interiors, getting ready to set the fixtures. The plumbing's complete, but they actually need to set the bathroom fixtures. The maintenance building is looking pretty good inside. It's actually smaller than it looks. I was in there the other day, and Bill and I thought it was so big, and then once you get in there, it's not as big as it looks, but outside it looks really neat. They're working on topsoil placement, and remember, the topsoil was one of the cost-saving measures that La Riviere developed the idea of, can we process material on site? So he negotiated a change to his contract. He used the Mount Hink material. He processed about 6,000 yards of it. We had it tested to make sure that it was appropriate and that there weren't any contaminants in it that weren't suitable for kids to play in. Bill's been doing all he can to leverage Coeur Green out of the wastewater department, and we've successfully made a nice mixture up there, and that's been a real success story. It generated quite a cost savings that we were able to go put into park elements that you really see, and I'll show you some of them here in a little bit. And then the hydroseeding and landscaping is moving on, and then a little bit of the concrete work.
Bill, can I ask, Mr. Chair? The hydroseeding, is that going to happen before snow?
Some of it's happening now, and I'll show you some pictures of it,
Okay.
and I'll talk a little bit about the hydroseeding challenges, we'll call them, and Bill might want to weigh in as well, because it's been a little bit of an element of frustration also as we've moved through this. This is looking downriver towards Post Falls, looking towards the west. This is what the site used to look like. This is what it looks like now. And you can see, we call this area Phase 1, which is that development area I mentioned earlier. There was about how big was the earthwork project here? 120,000 yards of earthwork, and we've moved in here. The park project moved about 80,000 yards of material. And the reason we had to move that material around is there was lots of pockets of unsuitable. We also wanted to shape the park into a more usable space, but we would come across unsuitable soil materials. Some we'd have to haul it off-site and import material from Mount Hink, and we processed a bunch of the stuff on site here. So to the project's credit, and Tommy LaRiviere deserves a lot of this, is we've brought very, very little material onto the site other than prepared like structural crushed rock, but everything else, has been just from borrowing out of Mount Hink. You can see the shared use path through here. The pedestrian path is the graveled one that's along the river, and you can just lightly see it through there. This is looking towards the east, and you can see this is one of the unsuitable areas that we came across and had to mine all that material out of there because that's the end of the parking lot. This is looking in that same direction, and you can see the parking lot is in there. Back in this area here, the beach. The beach is one of those areas that we were able to take the savings from the topsoil and put it into the beach down here. And that was one of the elements Bill was talking about. And we're all kind of our own worst enemies. We save a little bit of money. We get down to the side, and I don't think I've told the commission this, but it was a cold day, and Bill's walking ahead of me, and I'm looking at this beach, and I know exactly what Bill's going to do. He's going to turn around and look at me and go, "We're not leaving it like this." And he was about 10 paces ahead of me, and I catch up to him, and he turns around and looks at me, and he says, "We're not leaving it like this." And it was one of those functions of just budget at the time. We just didn't have the money to do it.
Bill, can I interject something? That's not what I said. I said our backsides are going to be in a sling.
I was trying to be diplomatic here. And so that was one of those areas, and then we got Tommy LaRiviere down there, and we all started developing ideas, and I'll show you some pictures of it that got creative down there. It really has created a super special place. You can see Suzanne that comes in here, and you can see kind of the future road alignment. This is the extension of Atlas. This area in here is the kind of the open green space, and it needs a lot of remedial work just because of what you see down there. Those are off-road trucks, and it's been compacted. And so Bill and I are really watching to make sure that this gets tilled up pretty significantly so we don't have a permeability issue. This area right here is actually one of the development parcels. It's called Area 13. And it's actually one that is pending sale. This is another kind of looking towards the northwest, and you can see some of the earthwork down in here, and now you can see the parking lot, what it looks like. Here's the restroom, picnic building, and also the pump station. Now remember, this is it has the pump station. We draw water out of the Spokane River and run the irrigation system with it, and it also has a backup potable water that comes from the city's system. You just turn the valve and the crew can just switch it right over. This is the food truck area, and you can see there's a driveway that comes in here, and there's space for 4 food trucks to park there, picnic tables here, green space, playground. in here, and then this is the storage maintenance building here, and there's some back area storage up in this area as well.
Phil, on this photo, where's Area 13?
It's right here.
Okay. And then the area behind the shed, will that be all green?
No, this is Area 6. This is actually,
That's what I thought.
and this is another area that's been sold, and I say sold, it's pending a sale. Active West Development, which you might be familiar with, they've done a lot of infill product, and so they're doing some similar product in here, duplexes, and then some smaller, I think they call them casitas or cabanas,
Yeah.
back in this area here.
And then, I'm sorry, but just around the corner, parallel to the trail, it's not shown in the picture, isn't that a development area as well?
This is the last development in the Atlas area. Let's see if I can go back here. You can just, so this is Area 6
Yeah.
here.
So on the other side of that road, what
Yep.
is that?
That is, that's an existing multifamily here. This is your guys' dog park.
No, I meant
Oh, on that side?
right there, yeah.
That is potentially a development area.
Okay.
We'll go back here. That is potentially this area right here.
Yeah.
One of the things that, when I mentioned earlier that we're going back and remaster planning, now that the triangle parcel is in play, we'll go back and kind of reimagine all of this to make sure the overall project objectives are being accomplished now that the triangle piece, and one of the big objectives is revenue. The city wants their revenue, which is understandable. Long-term property values, because that drives tax increment, which is an important feature for the development in the short term for Ignite and also in the long term for the city, because as you drive increment, or property values, it generates revenue, potentially lowering taxes across all people. So there's some advantages to that. The reason that this green area is shown in here as park or open space is primarily because it's probably you can't remediate it in a cost-effective way because the unsuitable soils are so deep that we just can't dig them deep enough. And, you know, if it costs you $20 a square foot to remediate it and you can sell it for 10, it doesn't make much sense to do that. But we're still going to go back and kind of look at all those areas. So we anticipate that there's probably going to be single family there, but we're not sure. And Councilman Wood will be right in the middle of that, right? So, because you're part of that committee.
Well, I saw that, I mean, it runs parallel to the trail,
Mhm.
and it's all been flattened out. So,
That's this area right here.
Yes.
And that area will also not be, it'll just always be open space. And that was another area that had very deep, unsuitable soils.
okay.
And so it was beyond redemption. So we had to go in and do something with it. And it was, again, one of those things, we had some unsuitable material that came out of here. Do you haul it off-site, which is a premium, or do you waste it here? So anyway, that was the intent.
It'll be green space then. Will it be manicured green space?
That's up to, honestly, that's up to kind of this next phase of the project here.
see.
And I think there's been some interest. Originally, when we were putting the budget together, there wasn't enough money to do anything recreational up here. And I think you guys might remember that. And the decision was, well, we'll leave it natural, because that's pretty low cost. There's a little bit of energy coming out of some folks about should we go back and look at doing something recreational if this triangle parcel generates additional revenue. And so that's part of the pro forma analysis that we need to go back. And I think the way that we're going to approach that is, we'll first do the math, do the pro forma. Is it going to generate any excess revenue? And I want to be careful because I don't know that it will. If it does, then leadership, city leadership, Ignite leadership have to decide, well, what do we do with that? And then is one of those things, do we create recreational space? Is there a need for more active recreational space? And if that's a question, then of course it would come back here to this group to say, yeah, we need it, or no, we don't need it.
Thank you.
Should I do that picture? This is the beach area, and it's hard to imagine what that used to look like, but it used to be covered with trees and bushes. We got in there and removed that area, and you can see we're removing the unsuitable soils from that area. and that's what it looks like now. What this originally was intended to be was essentially from this point to the dog park. It was a big sand area, and that was about right there when Bill turned around and looked at me. And he said, we need to do something there. Also, when we walked it with the Ignite board, a couple of the commissioners said, we should do something different here to make this softer and more usable. Well, with some of the savings that came out of the topsoil, we went in and brainstormed some solutions here. This will all be green space. It's all got quite a bit of trees in it, so it'll be shady. This is still the sandy beach in this area here. This is the accessible picnic area. Each one of these will have a picnic table on it and a barbecue. And but this is the accessible route. So back to this picture. Let's see if I can. Well, you can't quite see it here, but there's accessible parking right there, and you can get out and head right down to that parking spot. And both of these routes are all accessible routes down to the swim area and to the kayak launch down here. So you look at that again. So this is an ADA route to here, down to the swim area. You can kind of see the outlines of the swim area there. And this is a multiple deployment swim area, and I'll show you. You can use both a transfer wall and you can wheel a chair all the way in and become submerged down in here. And then this is the kayak launch down here. This is Mount Hake, and you can actually see La Riviere's got their power screen down there, and they're processing material. We did a lot of prospecting. Ignite authorized a prospecting effort where we went in and kind of hunted around in different areas to see what types of materials we could find. Some of it is processable, other are not, and the vast majority that's left over probably will just be shaped into a pile. That's what it looks like now. You can see the Coeur de Green down here, and you can see the topsoil here. And they actually mix it right here up on site, and then they take it down into the project area. So this is looking west, just past the dog park, and you can see kind of the trail takes these crazy serpentine route here. And that's obviously to cause people to slow down, because you're going to have people potentially riding their bikes here and people sitting here in their picnic table. There's trees and bushes in here that'll add a little friction to it. We're also going to bump out these areas with some fill in here, so you'll see some more serpentine in the slope there, and that will just get covered with dryland grass seed. This area in here gets covered with microclover, and Bill can talk about his idea to use that, which is pretty clever. Because the microclover is a little bit of, maybe you want to talk about that, Bill, if you don't mind, about why we're putting ryegrass in. And
Sure. So this is not a problem with COVID. This happens to be a problem with fires. The microclover is being harvested in Oregon. The Oregon plant had to evacuate. So I don't know if we're going to get the microclover this fall. So we're going to shoot it with an annual ryegrass to hold it so it won't move, erosion control. And then in the spring, the contractor will be obligated to come back and shoot it with the microclover. And it's the same thing true any of the areas that have microclover. We're using a park blend in the main portion of the park. A fescue park blend is something different. And then the common clover is available, and that'll go in this time of year with a blend of ryegrass as well. The ryegrass takes about 10 days to pop. The clover's similar, 14 to 10. So we'll get some germination out of it. I'm holding the contractor's feet to the fire, and if we don't get the germination that we like to see in the spring and we have too much dieback, he's going to reshoot the whole thing. So we're doing what we can right now with what we have. But I'm excited about this idea of trying some new species or varieties of grasses. My hope is that the microclover, for example, we may not have to mow it as often. Maybe it's got a 3-week or 4-week cycle. It has less flowers, so therefore it's a little more expensive because the gleaning, the harvesting of that blossom where the seed is reduced. And so your production rate, your harvest is lessened, so consequently the cost is a little bit higher. But I think it'll pay dividends for us in the long run.
Mr. Chair? Bill, do you know when you're going to to put that in?
Well, some of it's begun already. The riparian, as Phil goes through it, he'll show you where the riparian's been shot already. The riparian seed mix is a little different because it's water stuff. And so we had taken the landscape architect had actually two separate bands of riparian grasses to make it, excuse me, make it easier on the contractor. We just blended those and made it one solid homogeneous seed mix. So yeah, there's that riparian stuff that's already down. And I'll find out more about what your question is on Wednesday, because they were supposed to shoot that beach area with ryegrass by Friday. I thought it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Great.
How about the balance of the area that needs seed?
So all of it will get shot with the ryegrass at a minimum this year, the annual ryegrass, because it dies off. The big park area here, in this area, here, and here, will also get shot this year. We don't anticipate that we may get complete germination out of it. And so the contractor, as Bill said, will have to come back and shoot it again in the springtime.
Well, this year runs through December 31st, right?
Yeah.
Are we anticipating this happening before the ground freezes?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, they're telling us that they anticipate that it might be second week of October by the time they get in here and do this. Right now, we've been focusing them on the shoreline because this is obviously the highest risk area from an erosion standpoint. And so we want that to be shot and germinated. This area is still at risk, but it's dammed up, so to speak, from the river. So if there were erosion in here, it wouldn't make it to the river.
So Commissioner, I had the same concerns you are going too late. So I got the seed provider, Pineview Horticultural, Pat Zimmer came out and we chatted a couple hours. We walked the site and I trust Pat. I've been using him his dad for 20 years. And he says that what we're doing will be okay. Right? We'd prefer it a little sooner, but he said by mixing the rye in there, we'll be in good shape. So if it looks like he has to get rye everywhere, and if he means he has to come back in the spring and do all the other seed blends, then he's going to have to come back and do all the seed blends. But the rye will get that down for certain. And that one will germinate without much effort. As long as we're having conditions like we have now.
We were talking a month from now, though.
Well, I think that the only one that really might be a delay, excuse me.
Nope.
Is this piece here. The beach because what he has to do on this one, he's got a lot of prep to do. He's going to have to go in there and rip this thing. He's got the main line in. We've held off on putting in the laterals because I'm having to go in there with big claws on the back of his loaders and just tear this thing up because it's been a haul road, and I don't want to worry about the permeability of it. And then the other slide you had here, Phil, I was going to show them. Am I going the right way? Yeah. This piece here, this is that riparian. On these slopes, we're not mowable. We're using a different variety there called EcoTurf. That overlook as you come off Riverstone has got a very steep piece as well. This is one we won't mow. It's a type of fescue that grows up about 10 inches and just let it fall over. You knock it down in the fall or winter, and it just comes back again. So it'll hold that edge or that slope, and we don't have to get in there and do anything with it.
One of the themes that I think from the beginning we heard about is keep the park natural, as much as you can. And as we work through the park design, we kind of created this line, right in here. This is the manicured turf area. And once you exit this and head west, the balance of that area is not manicured anymore, with the exception at the water access. As you can see one down here. We call this one the amphitheater. It has a manicured area, and then I'll show you another one here. This is Avista setting the light poles in the parking lot. You guys saw that picture. This is flat work around the picnic area restroom building. Some more flat work. This is down at what's it's the far west water access, and the street will eventually be up here. This is an ADA route that comes down like this An ADA route comes to here. You can see there's a sitting bench right there. This area gets heavily landscaped with trees and bushes. The intent being is that once you get down to these steps, the world's kind of behind you. So you're down in the water and you don't necessarily hear the world behind you to provide a little bit of seclusion in there. You can see the Avista lights that we placed in the areas to make it safer at night. So if you happen to be down there, there's some light, pedestrian scale light down there. This is an amphitheater picture again, but these are the areas that will have the more manicured microclover on them, and these get heavily planted in this area. But here you can see there's a set of people steps that'll have a handrail on it that you can walk down and get into the water at the bottom of that. There's quite a bit of the original shoreline material that was left there, and it looks a little bit scruffy. It had quite a bit of noxious weeds in it, like so many that when they killed the noxious weeds, there was nothing left. So we've talked about how they're going to get in there and they're weed whacking it down and seeding it with that riparian seed, and then it will also get interplanted in some areas where they'll use riparian plugs, things that like to live on the water's edge there. There's a bunch of plugs you'll see that'll be down in that area.
So there's 260 trees of riparian variety that are seedlings, and the remainder of the park is going to get almost 300 trees.
Yeah. This is another shot looking back towards the east. You can see the old ramp that was in here where they used to haul logs in and out, and the thing was in such good shape we just left it there. So you can walk down the steps and get onto the ramp. It alternately appears and disappears depending on how much boat traffic there is, because it gets covered up with aggregate. And you can see the walls back in there that we used for shoreline stabilization. This is an area, I'll show you a picture here, but where in the future, if the commission decides, you could put a dock out here, a day-use dock, and the gangway would come off of that area because the parking lot is just right up there. So if you were out on the water, you needed to get out and use the restroom, you could park at the day-use dock, jump up here, run up to the restroom. This is looking from up on the Prairie Trail. We call it the Overlook. These are the stairs that go down. There's also a bike path that goes to the west, shared use path, and then an ADA trail that goes to the east. This is the entrance to the dog park, and you can see the dog park it's right in that area. It has trees in it, and it's fenced on both sides, and there's docks. So you can walk your dog down if it's one you can throw the thing into the water and the dog can jump off and swim around in there. There's a log boom that encircles it, so hopefully the dog won't swim over the log boom or under it. And then back in that direction, there's also a log boom that continues on down to the landing area, so both the ADA swim launch and the kayak launch are behind a log boom to maintain the safety of those folks that are going to be in there. That was not in the original project award, but through the project savings, we were able to put that in there. As we had generated the savings, we looked at that, and Bill kind of went through and said, well, these are the priorities that we want to achieve, and obviously the ones that involve safety were first on his list. The irrigation intake was also another one that was not originally funded. There's the maintenance building, storage building. Here's Monty's playground, which looks really cool. It's really a neat deal. These are actually artifacts from the original Atlas Mill.
There are two of them, aren't there?
Yes, ma'am. Yep. And the other one is just outside the picture. Whoops, outside the picture in that direction. These are a couple of shots that Bill was mentioning earlier, that where we've gone in and seeded this with hydro, the riparian seed in here. You can see the fence that's run along this edge. The fence is probably technically not required for the slope, or technically it's not required for the slope. But if we don't put it in, I think we all know what's going to happen here. We're actually this is where they set the last fence post, but we're going to have them bring it back and kind of taper it into here to discourage people from sneaking around it. These rocks have become a fashionable fishing area. And so there's some other areas where we want them, where the slopes are flatter, where they can get down to the rocks, and if they want to walk down there, that's a great place. These slopes are just too steep for that. This was another element that was added. This is down towards the western end of the project. There's not toilets down this far, because obviously the plumbing is all the way on the other end. And so this was another day Bill and I were out there looking at this, and we ended up finding an area to put a picnic or a porta potty shelter in here. Tried to find a place that we could obscure it behind some trees. and the shelter will set in here, and it's in a good location because this particular spot will be very popular because it's got an extensive amount of access to the water. And this is another picture of that area where we're just now moved a little bit east here, but you can see the steps down into the water. This is a beach area. You guys obviously know when this was a week or so ago, and the water's already started to go down. And they're planting the trees in here, and this will also receive microclover. This is the kind of a close-up. You're standing right at the water's edge looking down the ADA launch. These are transfer walls. They're going to get handle grips on each side here. So if you want to just wheel in part of the water, there'll be handrails on both sides of this ramp as you go down. So even if you're not in a wheelchair, just folks that might be older and need to hold on to something to get into the water, they can hold on to that, get over to the transfer wall, and move themselves into the water. If you are in a wheelchair and you want to submerge yourself, you can go down into here. During summer pool, you're in 24 inches of water, which is the minimum. This was designed to pool standards. It's kind of a funny thing. When I was working on the design, there is no really standard for a water access, so I used a pool design standard. The challenge with this one is you're making an encroachment into the waters of the U.S. and onto the state of Idaho's land because they own the river bottom. So there was this give and take of how far I could go out into the river. And as far as I wanted to go, the budget went off the charts and the encroachment was bigger. And so we kept it at 24 inches of water because it kept it closer to shore, which made the permit more achievable. So there was a balance to be struck there. These rails, as you can see, to our disappointment, these are stainless steel rails that we thought were durable, and we installed them, and before the fences went up, the kids got to them. And you can see that there's a piece missing here, and they kind of look lopsided, and they've decided that this is a great place to launch themselves into the water, unfortunately. So they've done quite a bit of damage to this, and these are not wimpy rails. They're pretty substantial structures, but not substantial enough. So we've decided what we're going to do is, rather than trying to repair those, once the water goes down, we're probably going to change this out to a powder-coated steel structure that is more durable, still removable if Bill wants to pop it out of there, but it's going to be a much more robust structure. The rest of it will probably remain what it is because there's no reason to damage it. But they really went after this.
So Phil, with that, we went back to Ignite and asked for some additional funding to get security. So the fence went up, and we have security 7 days a week now. I spoke with the security guard at the end of last week, and it's getting better, but he still had an altercation with a gentleman last weekend who wouldn't listen to him because someone left one of the guys that was on the landscape crew left the gate open on Celtice, and he and his wife came in there and kind of lit into the guard a little bit, but the guard was able to let him understand that it's a working site and it'll be open soon. But and we're going to keep that guard around for till probably the end of this month.
One of the other things that we'll work on towards the end of the project, and this will probably get some input from the Disability Action Coalition, is the signage, the appropriate signage at the head of this thing. I'll scoot back to one of these other pictures. It's really a facility that's designed, you know, obviously it's a public facility, so I suppose anyone can use it. But like a lot of times you go into a restaurant and it says, you know, this area, please reserve this area for folks that may need special access. And Bill and I have talked about what is the appropriate signage there that communicates a message that is firm but respectful and all those things. So we'll work on that, and it'll end up somewhere down in here. Same with this picnic area here. So hopefully it gets the message across to people that it's not a skateboard park. It's, you got one of those somewhere else. So, and then this is an example of the interpretive signage that's set up for the sign itself. So the signs still have to be made, but this is the bollard and fixture for it. That one is located right here. So here's the parking lot, obviously. This is where a future marina could go. But when I didn't quite take a very good picture, but when you look down that direction, you can see the shoreline. And so it's a really great opportunity to put a sign there that talks about the history of the mill and whatnot. This is a shot looking at, we call them the stone steps, even though they're made out of concrete. This is looking east up the Spokane River. And of course, pictures never do anything justice, but this spot is really cool. We worked really hard to situate it. It's next to a gigantic pine tree. And the contractor was super careful when they constructed it to try to make sure to stay out of the roots and whatnot. But once this gets seeded and grown in here, it's really going to be a neat spot. It'll have handrails on both sides, so you can get down there and put your feet in the water. So down to the project schedule part, they should have the majority of the work completed by October 1. There's going to be punch list items that will continue for several weeks. A lot to do with flat work. There's a lot of flat work remediation that needs to occur. The site's probably going to remain fenced till mid-October. And that was a discussion that Bill had. We had the discussion with Ignite. Also from some of the city leadership, I know Bill talked to city leadership, and the decision was, at this point, let's just keep it fenced and let it heal in. Because as you guys know, when you hydroseed and you put lots of water on it, the ground gets soft, and when the kids ride their bikes through it and put their feet through it, we just got to come back next year. And so the idea is let's just let it heal in as best we can here. And then, as Bill mentioned earlier, reseeding the areas will likely be necessary in the spring of 2021. So that is kind of the quick and dirty rundown.
Christie?
Thank you. Bill or Phil, either one. Do you anticipate saying we're open this year?
Yes, I hope to.
Okay.
I don't think we're going to keep it up all winter. We're planning to move into that shop building sometime in November. We're going to start doing snow removal when it's time. I've got a crew we've got some equipment purchased for this site, so we're ready to outfit that shop and start our operations.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Bill, has there been any discussion regarding kind of an official public opening of the park?
Not really, only because the opening of it is sort of a moving target. I think as we move forward and get a better idea, we'll certainly do something. Again, it's a little bit like the memorial problem. It's like, I don't know if we really want to announce a large gathering of folks that come in for a ribbon cutting. You asked me a question I haven't really given a lot of thought to, but maybe we have more of a you and council ribbon cutting ceremony as opposed to what we normally would do at a park where we have a big public opening and a lot of people there and a party and balloons and hot dogs and stuff. So I don't know if that's how far we'll go, but that's to be seen.
Mr.
Jim?
Bill, what will the hours be?
Just like every park, is it 5:30 to 11?
Jenny?
Are there any manufacturer delays due to the pandemic on any of the buildings or any of the other structures?
It was primarily, we think we've gotten over them, but there were that were related to the siding and the windows. Those were the things that really slowed the contractor up, and there's a whole other backstory about the level of discussions we've had with them about the delay, liquidated damages, evidence of delay. Purple Pipe stopped, because remember the system uses surface water, so they had bought a bunch of Purple Pipe. They needed some more, they placed the order, and Purple Pipe wasn't available. And so we've got correspondence, because when the contractor tells you that, we said, well, that's great, we need it backed up by the manufacturer, so get a note from your mom that says you truly were sick. And they produced all those things, and so we have evidence to provide that, because Ignite now is managing the contract, and it was important for us when we were talking to the Ignite board to be able to talk about those contractual things. And so those were the primary ones that actually slowed production. There were other ones, but they weren't on the critical path. I brought this picture back up because one of the things that we also added, when we were originally doing the parking lot, we had talked about, are we going to do parking kiosks? And the thought was, nope, this is going to be kind of a neighborhood park. And I scratched my head a little bit at the time, but the decision was no parking kiosks. At some point that got mentioned either, I can't remember if it was to the city administrator, to the mayor, and the answer was, or the explanation was kind of like, what? No parking kiosks? We have to have the ability to put in parking kiosks. So we went back, and fortunately, we hadn't buttoned everything up, and there's a parking kiosk that could be put in there, and another one at this end down here. So if this other ever does need to become paid parking, you have the ability to do that.
Christie?
Phil, maybe you already have, maybe it's already have, but I'm not down there at night. Are the lights on?
I think of Vista charged them, but I don't know if they're running.
Yeah, I don't think that they, to my knowledge, they're not on yet.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love the design. They're really, really quaint.
Yeah, it was, with a Vista provided lights, you have 4 choices. And Dell Hatch, who you guys know, well, I sent him over to Dell and I said, Dell, which one of these would you like? And of course, I got the email back, none of them. And so I said, well, in the main part of the park, around the picnic shelter area, you see that light fixture, which this is similar to, it's the memorial light fixture. Trying not to give Bill this gigantic inventory of lights, right? You don't want to have a huge inventory of lights, so the spares, he needs to only have two spares on hand, the McEwen spare and the memorial spare here. So these are in and around the picnic area, and through the rest of the park, including in the parking lot, they're in a Vista light, because it's a cost-effective way for the city to manage their lights. If something happens, the Vista will come out and replace it.
Fantastic.
Anything else for Phil or Bill?
Oh, it's just beautiful. Just so amazing, just in a year's time.
Yeah.
The discussions that we've all had and how excited we were about it. And then we all walk, I know all of us walk it. So we've watched it all summer, and it's just been great. You guys have paid such close attention to detail and just done such a beautiful job. So
Thanks.
thank you.
Well, Bill's a very good client to work with, and he's very receptive and creative, sometimes too creative. But we get out there, and Bill's like, we need to change all this. And I'm like, wait, time out, because, I'm trying to deal with the back-end contract things. But we have kept it on budget, and that's the other positive story here is, and when I say on budget, like in the hundreds of dollars, we're under budget. But that's a better story to say than we're thousands of dollars over budget. And there's been surprises, obviously, along the way, and there's been a lot of give and take with the contractor, and sometimes that rolls into time, where we can negotiate time and money, and sometimes we have to give time, but the money goes down. But it's really turning out neat. I appreciate the comment.
It's really nice.
Well, thank you for the great presentation and all your efforts on this project. It's exciting, and can't wait to experience it when it's all finished.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, next item is an action item regarding the Parks Master Plan. Staff report states that the decision point tonight is whether the Parks and Recreation Commission will recommend to City Council the adoption of the 2020 Parks and Recreation Master Plan. The city adopted the current Parks and Recreation Master Plan in 2008 and has been implemented many of the recommendations. There have been many changes to the city since then, and an update to the plan was needed. The Coeur d'Alene Parks and Recreation Department created this plan in-house as opposed to hiring it out to an outside agency. This plan inventories park and recreation facilities as well as provides suggested recommendations for future parks by 2040. Although the plan is projecting for growth by the year 2040, the plan will need to be updated in 10 years to make sure we are meeting the needs of the community. The department is seeking to develop a plan that will provide the citizens of Coeur d'Alene the facilities and programs they need for outdoor recreation now and well into the future. Adopting the plan does not oblige the city to allocate funds for implementation of the plan. When a project is identified as either funded by applying for grants, obliging new annexations and developments to put in facilities, or requesting it be put in the budget in the future. Adopting the Parks and Recreation Master Plan will provide a blueprint for parks and recreation facilities for the next 10 years. Again, the decision tonight is whether to recommend to City Council the adoption of the 2020 Parks and Recreation Master Plan. With that, we have Monty McCauley and Mike Kempton here to take us from there.
So gentlemen, before you begin, I've got to say something here. these two gentlemen are really talented. I mean, he referenced what we did with MIG back in 2008. I think MIG charged us just shy of $100,000 to write that plan. These two guys worked on this thing really diligently. Mike actually is a published author. And so, and Monty is a great writer as well. But I just want to give these guys real kudos for doing this, because we would have spent probably $150,000, if not more, in today's marketplace to have another company do what MIG did for us in 2008. So just, you guys, thank you. You've done an excellent job.
Thank you, Bill.
Good evening, Commissioners. So I have to add, I haven't been in here in a while either, and I like this new big yellow mouse. I can point to things, and I will be in this presentation. In the past, you couldn't see it. So anyway, like Bill said, Mike and I have spent the last, I don't know, year and a half writing this plan. We took the old plan, we went through it, we kind of followed the same format. We tried to follow the same steps that they followed, except adding things that we had personal knowledge on, and the department had personal knowledge on, that made it more of a personal touch, we feel. And so we're going to start our first few slides with what we've accomplished since the plan back in 2008, and I'll let Mike take it away.
It's been a pretty impressive list we put together of all the accomplishments. We know about the parks that have opened since then, including Landings Park, Sunshine Meadows, Legacy Place Park. We've made irrigation improvements at Bluegrass and modified the disc golf course out there per the original master plan recommendation. We added an 18-hole disc golf course at Cherry Hill Park, which was a high priority item at that point. And we've added play equipment and a small satellite park to Sunset Field, and the west ball field's got lighting. I don't want to bore you with this too much, but we've added a bunch of acreage of parks too. We purchased the Person Field a second time, like Bill said. Part of that deal was also purchasing Bryant Park from the school district. We added 5 acres to Cherry Hill Park for a Field of Dreams project, which has not been implemented yet, but which is addressed in the new master plan. And we've made major improvements to some of our parks, including Fippany. A lot of that was done with a donation, by the way. We've made a full-size baseball field at Ramsey Park, which replaced the original Legion Field at McEwen Park and allowed us to develop that into a community park. It used to just be a series of sports fields. We've added new playgrounds at Person Field, Northshire Park, and Ramsey Park, plus the ones we installed at Atlas Park, Monty installed, and we also installed one at Memorial Park next to the skate park. One of the biggest recommendations in the original master plan, or the 2008 master plan, was to have an off-leash dog park somewhere in the city. We have 4 of them now. McEwen Park is now a big community park. You can see how busy that park is on a typical day. It's amazing the use it gets compared to what it got a few years ago. Memorial Park is the same thing. It's just incredible the amount of use that we get out there with our new skate park. I already addressed the Cherry Hill Park. We added 4 miles of Class 1 bike trail, the Prairie Trail. In Cherry Hill Park, 5 acres. We got a recreational lease in place for the BLM property along the Spokane River, which is going to become a park. We got another 2-mile section of railroad easement along the Spokane River, which runs through the Atlas Mill site, which has recently been paved. There's a waterfront park being developed on that site, which waterfront access was a high priority in the original master plan. An accessible trail was built on Tubbs Hill. We have trail systems now on Canfield Trails Natural Area and at the Fernand Lake Natural Area in Potlatch Hill Road. The master plan was created for Veteran Centennial Trail finally, hopefully, or Veteran Centennial Park. Hopefully that will get implemented in the next few years. A management plan was created for our open spaces. An urban forestry management plan is created and is included as part of this plan. And the Parks Department secured use of the old National Guard Armory as we are running out of space at our existing maintenance facilities. And one of the most important things was, per the original master plan, the Parks Department was combined with the Recreation Department. We were one of the few organizations that had separate Parks and Recreation Departments. Now we're all one big happy family. And we've added 26 miles of shared paths and 43 miles of bike lanes. since the original plan was implemented.
So the thing I was pointing out, Mike
I missed something.
forgot to mention the giant new skate park we put in.
Absolutely.
One of the reasons why Memorial's so busy now. So I'm going to talk about level of service now. And so when we started rewriting the master plan, you got to base it on something. How do you determine how many parks your community needs and what facilities, what programming you need, that sort of thing. There's two ways to get it. First, you go out and ask the public. You do surveys, and also you keep track of in-house, if you have playfields, have waiting lists, if your parks are crowded, if you're getting complaints because nobody can use different facilities and you're backed up for swim team, that sort of thing. So we did both of those things. Level of service isn't standard across the nation. Each community is different. And what that is you figure out through those two different things I mentioned how many acres of parkland per 1,000 residents your city requires. And so in the next slide, we're going to talk about what it was, what it is now, what we want it to be in the future. And so back in 2008, when we'd written this plan, we had about a 3 acre per 1,000 resident level of service. And at the time, MIG recommended, they actually recommended higher, but we settled at 4 and said, well, we can shoot for 4 and see if we can and make that work. Well, since then, we've added like 40 acres of parkland. And with the current population, we're right about 4.7. And our new goal with all of our polling and recalculating is about 5, a level service 5. And that would put us at our goal of having a neighborhood park within a half mile of every home and a community park within a mile of every home in the city. And so we're projecting out about 2040 is what we're aiming at to get those parks. Once you have those parks, you won't ever need another. Well, as far as the land, as far as our city is kind of bound in. If we ever expanded across the river, of course, that would change. So we project the city to be at about 85,000 people in 2040. If we don't add any new parks to the city, our level of service would drop down to about 2.82 acres per 1,000 people. And our parks would get pretty crowded because, the county's grown as well, and the greater Spokane metropolitan area would be crazy. So in order to serve our populace and the visitors we get, we'd need to add about 185 acres of parkland over the next 20 to 30 years. And so this plan addresses those needs. All right, so we went out and we spoke with the public. We had some questionnaires made up. We took them to several different events that summer in Coeur d'Alene. We also put it online. We put out social media blasts telling people to come take our survey. We got quite a few respondents. And I'm going to go through a list of, 6 or 7 of the questions we thought were pertinent to the master plan. And so when asked what your favorite attractions were in Coeur d'Alene, the top 3: natural areas and parks, trail facilities, and waterfront amenities. What facilities would enhance our community? Again, we have natural areas, ped bike facilities, of course, performing arts venue, which doesn't really, the city of Coeur d'Alene probably wouldn't necessarily handle that, but additional day use docks, boat moorings, that sort of thing. Public input. How do you rate the importance of natural parks? Bang, off the charts. Very important. What 3 things should be added to the Coeur d'Alene park system? More bike lanes and trails, more public parks and trails near water, which we are accomplishing with the Atlas Mill project, more hiking and mountain bike trails. What 3 activities would you like to see expanded? More bike lanes and trails, more food trucks, more public parks and trails near water. Which specific area would you like to see additional natural areas? Along the Spokane River. We're accomplishing that now. What specific areas do you want trails and bikeways? Atlas Mill site. This is what we did before the plan even came out. This survey went out. I think it was being kicked around, but there was no plan at the time. So I split the map of our current parks up into the northern part of the city and the southern part, just because the map is pretty big and it's pretty difficult to see the different parks. As you can see, we have parks up here to the northwest. We have some on the east. We have a big gap here and a pretty big gap over here. On the southern end, we have a lot more parks down by the water, but we still have some pretty good gaps in the center and in the old portion of downtown. So the next map's going to have a lot of different dots on it. Let me explain it to you. So, and for all the three different types of things we have on here, we have colors. Red is community parks, which are large parks for everybody. Yellow is neighborhood parks, which are closer to your neighborhood, smaller parks. Natural areas, which are kind of the blue, purple. And green are sports fields. Solid dots are existing. You can ignore those for now. They just kind of show you, with everything else, where our new parks would be, how it would populate the city. The faded circles, the large red ones are proposed community parks. The slightly smaller yellow ones that are faded are proposed neighborhood parks. And the purple/blue is nature areas, natural areas. So now you're going to see a few on here that are dotted circles. Those are parks that aren't created yet, but are actually planned, not just proposed. So we have the one up here at the Trails, formerly Hawks Nest, that proposed almost a community park. It's about 10 acres, I believe. That'll be a neighborhood park. We have the Atlas Mill Park that is almost finished. We have the BLM Park that Mike had talked about earlier along the river that we're leasing from the Bureau of Land Management. We have a couple, this right here is the Forest Park that Jack Forrest has donated, I believe 3 acres to the city that we'll be developing at some time in the future. And we have the concourse that Bill had talked about earlier. So this is kind of the general picture. Some of these are actually doable, like this Armstrong property, I'm sure you've seen recently, has come forward into the very early stages of development, being annexed and becoming developed in the city. They've already brought conceptuals forward that show parks and trails all through this whole area, and that would meet that need on that side of town. Some of the other ones are more wish list, like in this area near the fairgrounds. If that ever moved somewhere else and that became available, that would be a good spot. There's also some properties that are bigger, or there's some construction pits that could turn into park areas. And over here on the east side of town, this park area here has come forward a couple times to city council to be developed, and it never has quite made it, but that'd be a good spot for a community park and a natural area. And so the next few slides actually list these parks, some by their actual names, some by the names we've given them temporarily as placeholders. The first page talks about community parks, and then it goes into neighborhood parks, and the list would end there. So this would be it built out. This isn't going to necessarily be in the next 10 years. Again, this will be something that when money comes available, when there's political will and there's money and opportunity, then we would come forward and ask for money, applying for grants, putting in budgets, that sort of thing. And is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, we did miss a slide, so we don't have a slide for this, but our plan does address all the facility needs as well, specific recreational facilities. We talk about the need for a second baseball field. We worked with our recreation department to see what they think our needs are as well, and along with public feedback. One of the biggest ones was a waterfront dog park. And guess what? That's going to be open here in a few weeks, so that'll be really nice. But the plan addresses more skate facilities, more ball fields, a possible community center to fill in the gap in the existing service we have between some of our private organizations. And all that is covered in there in great detail. So I apologize for not having the slide ready for that one, but it is in the plan. If you have any specific questions, we'd be glad to answer them.
Well, and I think one of the community parks, like let's say sometime in the future, the Forest Nursery ever stopped production and we were able to get that land, it'd be an ideal spot for a community park / sports complex. It could fulfill the needs for our sports fields to build out.
Jim?
Maybe I could add something. In looking at the plan, I was really impressed with your detailed comments that you made at every park in terms of when things need to be replaced, when they're going to live their life and they need to be done. And I would commend you on that because often that's not looked at. And so it certainly gives us a big list to start looking at priorities. And being on the commission for a while, one of the things I've learned is that if you have a dream and you have some plans, you can make it happen even if you don't have money, because that's what the whole career has been here in Coeur d'Alene, is making parks when there wasn't money. So I think this gives us a really good future glimpse of what could be and get people excited in their neighborhoods and get them involved, and it's great. Great job.
Can you mention how people might be able to find this online and review the draft of the master plan?
We currently don't have the draft online.
What we did do was we tried to get as much information. We can't put the draft out there and have people edit it and stuff. So what we've brought to you today is an accumulation or culmination of all those comments that they've gathered.
Okay.
And then it's really here for your adoption and on to council for adoption at this point. After it's been solidified or voted on, the plan would be available to people to have if they want to look at it in the future.
Okay.
Currently, we have the 2008 plan that's available on the Parks website, the city website, Parks, and then we have a master plan area that has the Trails master plan and the older Parks master plan. And so they can click and look at those now. We'll replace that older plan with the new one once it's adopted.
Gotcha.
I would like to add, too, that we worked on this plan for about 18 months and things move so fast. So there's things that actually are in the plan that have already gotten bypassed. They've either been done or they're no longer possible. But it's all basically a big vision. Sometimes a little frustrating working with Bill because he gets stuff done so fast. It's like, wait a minute, we just put this in the plan and now you're doing it. It's like, come on, man.
That darn bill.
Yeah, but there are a few items in there. You will spot them in there, but I don't think they cause any heartburn for the overall plan because it is an overall vision.
Christie?
Well, Mike and Monty, excellent work. I'm just so happy to see you come forward with this master plan. And great, you've been working on it for so long. As Jim said, boy, you've really just got to have this planning in place if you're ever going to move forward. And I'd like to see a lot of areas of the city doing exactly what you're doing with master planning. So we will just use you as examples. How about that, Bill? I'm so pleased with this, and I can't wait for it to come to council. Good
It's a
work.
very thorough job.
It was a very fun project.
I concur with the comments by everyone here. I think you guys put a ton of effort into this. I think it shows that it is there. Great understanding of what our community needs will be. The one thing that feels a little different, though, and maybe it's the times we're in. This is the third set of master planning parks that I've been involved with. And there's always been an opportunity for some public feedback before final adoption by council. So is there any way to get this out to where public can comment? I don't see them changing much. I think it'd be more positive than anything, just to get that buy-in by the community at large before we move this on to council.
That's a good question, and I haven't considered that. And so we'll have to take that under advisement. I'm not certain how that would, how we would be able to glean information from the public out of this document where we could actually have some good dialogue on how we're going to then put that into the document. I thought our charge at the front end of this was, again, we mirrored a lot of what MIG did as far as how we gathered information from the people and didn't guide them as much as gave them a whole bunch of stuff to choose from. As you saw on there were things about police presence and things that weren't really part of park stuff. So, I mean, it gives you an indication about how it was the public's real own plan about how they wanted what they wanted to see. So I hadn't really thought it through as a draft. I wanted to bring this to you now and then on for adoption.
Yeah.
So I'll give that some thought.
Yeah.
And I remember when we did the 2008 plan.
Stay close to the mic, Monty.
I remember when we did the 2008 plan that earlier in this process, MIG had done those public meetings, and they did the surveys like we did, and then they compiled some stuff together and brought it back at a public meeting like you were talking about.
Yeah.
So we had done the surveys, we'd done a lot of stuff online. We didn't do that where we compiled it and showed them what they voted for, and that's pretty much the step you're talking about.
So we did that more remotely than we did in some of this, Commissioner, I guess I'm going to be like our contractor. I'm going to blame COVID. So we would have brought this back and maybe had more opportunity to have that. It was kind of getting away from us, and I kept thinking that this pandemic stuff was going to get behind us, and I thought we really needed to get this thing in action and get it adopted by the end of this year, because we started it, like the guy said, 18 months ago, and it's been kind of a slow process. We've done it in off-season. And so, like Monty's saying, we did that, but it did it more, here's what you voted on, here's what we decided, and the feedback was great, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, and Bill, I think, excuse me, Mr. Chair, thank you. I think that if you wanted to try to accomplish a little bit about what Mike's talking about, I don't think you're going to be able to hold the public meetings like we've done in the past. But you could align with Hillary with the comp plan and see where you're similar. And then, just if you wanted to look, I think you're going to find you're on track. Just with the MIG plan, I don't think it's changed that much.
Well,
But-
Monty, we did engage planning some.
Great.
So we were in concert with that. It does line up with, because she was able to visit with Monty some about where we were going, and it seems like they're doing what we are anticipating our needs are.
Perfect. Good.
Ginny?
In my years on the commission, one of the things we've really done is have the overview and the site, the foresight to kind of look to see where we need to acquire property, which is what I'm seeing in this plan. Where are we having the growth? Where are we lacking facilities? Well, one of the things the Parks Department is really good at is when we start putting the plan into action, then we have the open houses, because then people are actually looking at a specific spot. And I think we probably have a better idea by that point what it is we need to put in there.
In the master plan, we wanted to specifically avoid talking about specific pieces of property, because you need the flexibility, plus there could be some legal issues involved with it if we're recommending a certain piece of property gets acquired.
Absolutely.
So we were looking for places that had multiple options.
Then the price goes up, doesn't it, Mike?
That would be one of the problems.
And you never know when someone's going to gift something too.
Sure.
Like the forest property that we were given. So in the original master plan, there was a kind of a hazy spot where a park could be in that area, several blocks away. So in this plan, we wanted to make sure that we made the language so that it said in this general area, not nailing down one spot. That way, hey, if it shifts 4 blocks this way, it still meets that requirement, and it still might be something that we could acquire.
Well, you definitely want to leave the city with the flexibility to take advantage of opportunities. You never know where opportunities are going to come from sometimes.
Absolutely.
Mike?
Yeah. My intent is certainly not to slow this down. I think you guys have done a great job, and I think it deserves the exposure and that. Would it be possible to, once we've adopted and recommended, you've got, what, a 2-week window before it goes to council?
I see where you're going with this. It might give us a little more opportunity for your adoption, and then and maybe have a more a survey that they can do online to get some feedback. The difficulty with that is if we have some comments that maybe it needs to be changed, it's not the same plan that you adopted.
Possibly.
So if we adopt it, allow for more changes, it's no longer what you adopted. So, but I think we've done a pretty good job at getting what the public wanted. It's got enough wiggle in it because we didn't pin ourselves in for really multiple opportunities. The Forest Steel property is a good example of that. I had no idea, when we're still working with Grant Forrest on this, we're not solidified, so I'm not obligating him, but we are in discussions. We never saw that coming. The same thing's true up north in some of this areas where Monty identified we got some shy zones in the middle of town. We don't know what might happen there. We really don't. We just show, again, loosely there's a need, and we go after it. The list of the things that were voted on, I think out of those 250 respondents really shows what the public's after, and I think we've covered a lot of that pretty darn well.
I guess, Bill, where I was coming from is, what I was thinking is, publish what we've got. 'Cause I think it's good. I think it really is. And just allow for comment in general, pass that along with
Okay.
the comment to the council.
Okay.
And I think that does, in this
Okay.
COVID world
No, I
we
like
live
that.
in,
Yeah.
maybe that gets as close as we can
Sure.
get to that public involvement.
No, that's good thinking. So we could just hold back our presentation to council a little bit longer to get a little bit more input. I think that's pretty doable.
Bill, Monty, and Mike, it's a guiding and a planning document, the master plan. Is there any mechanism within the master plan that would allow for any type of considerations or amendments between now and the next 10-year period for an update?
I don't know
Constitutional
if
amendment?
we've ever done that. It's usually the amendment is the 10-year plan.
Actually,
But-
I have done it.
Oh, have we?
The
Okay.
2008 plan, I did have to make an update on one of the pages if something had happened.
Well, good. So there you go. It is possible then.
So we could put it online and have like an email address or a comment or a social media thing where they can send us comments? Is that what you're saying, that we could compile those and take it to council when it goes, or?
Well, we'll sit down, we'll sit down together and sort out how we can get that out electronically, and how we're going to do that and gather that data.
Okay.
Good work, guys.
Thank you.
You did include some cost estimates in this. Do you think that's going to scare people? Because the numbers are kind of high, but it's really over a long period of time. And, we're not saying this is what it's going to cost. We're not saying we're going to spend that kind of money, but I think it's helpful, but I hope people would understand that it's there to give us some guidance, not necessarily raise their taxes tomorrow to pay for this.
Right. Well, and the Parks Department historically has been really good at getting these things built for
Right.
way less and getting land donated or
Getting grants.
getting grants. And so the costs that are in there are as if we had to pay for everything, if we had to buy stuff at, we even went to a real estate appraiser in some of those areas. He went through and said, oh, if you're going to buy one in this neighborhood, you got to pay for this house, this house, this house, and that house, and it's going to be way higher. And so these are just if we had to pay for everything, and usually we can figure out creative ways to do it without having to do that.
I know there's a section there talks about funding options as well.
Okay, yeah.
It does talk about seeking grants and matching funds.
Well, I would hope as a commission here that once this gets adopted, that it would be a foundation for some more meetings and discussions with us in terms of, future priorities, kind of, because I think it's been a while since we've done that, since it was all McEwen Field and now the Atlas Park, and not just that, we've done a lot of things, but be good information for us.
I think the idea of the cost analysis has to do just for people have a bit of an understanding. I don't think people really at times know what costs are. Obviously, in 10 years, those costs may rise, they may fall. So they were just kind of a guesstimate, so people wouldn't have any sort of shock about it. When we buy things that are more commercial, like a bench, for example, or a drinking fountain, when I tell people what they cost, they always are a bit a shock about what it is. Well, I can go to Lowe's and buy that for $200.
Right.
Well, it's not the same kind of deal. So we just, MIG had thrown that into that original plan. We had some estimates just so people had a flavor of what it might run. But again, we understand that those costs would change. And as the guy said, we've done really well at getting donations, land donations, and those sorts of things, and grants. And Ignite has been honestly a great partner. I mean, they should be applauded for what we've done with our Parks Department, because without them, we would not be where we are today.
Absolutely.
Lonnie, Mike, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, what is the commission's pleasure here?
Well, Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion that we recommend to the City Council the adoption of the 2020 Park and Recreation Master Plan.
I would second that.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Wood to recommend to City Council to adopt the 2020 Parks and Recreation Master Plan, and been seconded by Commissioner Tate. Any further discussion?
I would just reiterate the comment that we'll make an effort to get this published out there somewhere on the web and work through some type of electronic medium to get feedback from the general public if they'd like to review and comment. And that'll certainly go to the council as well, along with our recommendation.
Everybody in agreement? Okay. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. That recommendation is unanimous and moves forward to City Council with the recommendation by Commissioner McDowell that community has an opportunity to review it and
Yep,
comment.
understood.
Okay. All right, our last item tonight is an action item regarding a dock grant. Tonight, the decision is regarding a recommendation to City Council to accept the bid for the new boat docks and pilings at the 3rd Street boat launch. For 45 years, the 3rd Street boat launch ramps have been one of the highest used recreational access areas for boaters in the state. For each of the last 3 boating seasons, it has seen about 7,000 launches, making this facility a premier boating destination on Coeur d'Alene Lake. It accommodates all classes of registered and/or licensed boats, Class A, 1, 2, and 3, and is also the best emergency waterfront access point for both the city and the lake. Services nearby include a no-cost marine pump-out, a mooring area where boaters may tie up, 50 boat trailer parking stalls, a trailhead to Tubbs Hill, and access to McEwen Park, the Centennial Trail, and downtown shopping. Finally, the launch ramps serve as a complement to the Coeur d'Alene Resort and to all the businesses in the area. These docks haven't been replaced since 2001 and have gone past the point where they can be repaired. The city has paid close to $4,000 in repairs to these docks over the past 3 years, and if they aren't replaced, the number will continue to grow. The timber floats are rotted and won't allow purchase for the bolts necessary to keep the docks from separating and becoming a public hazard. The pilings have been hit and dinged to the point that they'll break off and fall if they aren't replaced. The largest portion of the funds for the boat dock and piling purchase will come from a state-funded WIF grant with the Coeur d'Alene Parks Department providing the grant match dollars. The grant match funds will come from the city's Waterfront Improvement Fund, paid for by boat launch user fees. A breakdown of costs follows. City Waterfront Improvement Fund, funds from user fees, is $29,664. State Waterfront Improvement Fund grant is $124,007, bringing a total of $153,661. The new pilings will be made of steel, and the dock frame will be made of steel with polystyrene floats. The deck will be made of composite material. These docks are estimated to last for 50 years before needing replacement, as opposed to 15 to 20 years for wooden docks. Again, the decision tonight is a recommendation to City Council to accept the bid from Harrison Dock for the new boat docks and pilings at 3rd Street Boat Launch. Lonnie?
All right, so I believe I came before you guys back when we were applying for the grant. Well, we did get the grant, and we set out a bid packet, and Harrison Dock Builders were the only ones to come forward with a bid, and it came in within our budget that we could pay for. I was going to show you a few slides about what the docks are and what they'll look like. So this is the existing seawall launch, which is pretty similar to the kind that we're going to have installed if you approve the bid. So this is made out of the same materials, the polystyrene. The only difference is these are wooden bow rails instead of steel. The new ones will have steel bow rails, will be quite a bit more sturdy. And these ones were replaced only a few years after the current ones, and they still look good, they're still in great shape, and they're not falling apart. So these are our current ones. And you can see, in the staff report, I mentioned $4,000 in the past 3 years. You can see the newer wood in there where it had been repaired. Plus these plates that join the docks kept lifting up. The screws, the floats were rotted. When you try to screw it in, they would rip out. And then when you stepped on the plank, you can't see it here, but if you step on it, it would sink down and the other one would go up, and then you'd trip over it, and it was a pretty good hazard. And these pilings, it's hard to see in the picture, but some of them are down to just a crescent before they fall over. And so we had a pretty big need to replace these docks, and we're upgrading to go to some really nice docks that'll last for a good long time. So this was part of the bid packet, kind of shows an overview of where there'll be the two launches and mooring and next to the existing launch that will remain the same. This is the closest picture I could find of what the new one would look like as far as from Harrison Dock Builder. It's a little small picture, so I couldn't blow it up very well, but this one obviously goes around. It's got the steel bull rails, it's got the nice composite deck, and nice and sturdy in the last 50 years.
Monty, just a clarification, the $153,661, is that the actual bid amount from Harrison Dock?
That is,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. And that encompasses all the work?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's piling removal, replacement, and removing the old dock and shipping in the new one in sections and installing it.
Okay, and I think I asked this question the last time we discussed this. I think that state waterfront improvement grant comes from boat license
Right.
fees that are paid by boat licensees, not from state gas tax.
Okay.
Those are basically folks that when they license their boat, they designate the county of primary use, and those dollars should be allocated here. This is the highest use area in the county, so it should have continued priority.
And that's at the state level, and the funds that we have in the waterfront improvement account is through our user
Parking
fees.
Yeah. So technically, they're both user fees.
Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Chair, just, I'm glad to see this project moving forward. Glad you applied for the grant and were awarded the grant. It's clearly we need it replaced, and so great work once again. This will be, I think, a fairly easy decision for council, I would think. I think it's a great thing.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion then.
I'd make a motion that we recommend to council to accept the bid from Harrison Dock for the new boat docks and pilings at 3rd Street.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion's been made by Commissioner McDowell and seconded by Commissioner Tate to recommend to City Council to accept the bid from Harrison Dock for the new boat docks and pilings at the 3rd Street boat launch. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, unanimous recommendation to council.
Thank you.
Will this probably go to general services prior to council?
Correct.
Okay.
And the rotating, and Commissioner Wood, I don't remember, it's a general service, public works on and
Yeah.
off rotation, so I don't know where we fall into that cycle, but,
I'm not really sure either. I've been to one
okay.
because
Yeah.
of COVID.
So yes,
Two.
correct.
Okay, very good. Okay, any other comments or anybody would like to share before we close out tonight?
It's great to be back with all of you.
Yeah.
Sure is.
Good to see everybody. Good
Even though
back-
it's-
good to know that we're back to somewhat normal.
We're distanced, but it's good to see you all. And with that said, I'll go ahead and make a next meeting announcement. For our October meeting will be Monday, October 19th, 2020, 5:30 PM right here in the library community room. As of now, we don't have a Park and Rec workshop scheduled, but I guess I would just advise is just periodically check the city's website, Parks and Recreation, to see if one is scheduled in the future. I assume we probably don't have one scheduled as of now due to agenda items to discuss.
The only thing we're it's pending is the CAN course, and so depending on where everybody is at on reviewing the MOU will dictate how quickly that one comes forward.
Okay. Well, summer's gone awfully fast, and it's been kind of a weird year, and as of tomorrow is the first day of autumn, so with that cheery note, I guess, I'll I'll go ahead and entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second?
Second?
Okay. Motion's been made by Commissioner Lean and seconded by Commissioner McDowell for adjournment. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next time. Glad everybody is well.